Hello, I have another story, The Owl and the Lemming. Now, I almost didn't read this to you because it's not the typical story that I read, but I thought it had some good thoughts in it. See what you think. It's sort of like, well, it is like what we call an allegory. It means it's a story which is often between animals in like Aesop's fables, which are very old. The very first book that I ever read on these videos was The Tortoise and the Hare. Do you remember that one? And it was between two animals, and there was a lesson to be learned from the story. And I've read a few other ones like that too, where there's usually animals involved. And at the end of the story, you think, oh yeah, I get it. So anyway, that's what this story is. It's between two animals, an owl and a lemming, which is this little critter here. And the lesson learned from it is kind of cute. Well, you'll see what I mean. And see what you think of it, okay? And it also might be a good thing to look up what a lemming looks like in real life. The artist, of course, drew some cute pictures, and you can see that this owl, which is actually a baby owl, in comparison to this little lemming, it's pretty big, isn't he, in size? So it kind of gives you an idea how lemmings are pretty tiny little guys, okay? All right, here's our story. Oh, and I forgot to tell you the author is Roselyn, and I may not say this right, Akulukjuk. She is from, I believe, Upper Canada. Okay, she lives in Toronto, but I don't know if she always lived there, but she is from Canada, and that name to me reminds me of some of the native people that lived there years ago, and that last name. Anyway, one morning a young lemming made her way out of her den. At this time of year, the sun climbs high into the sky and never sets. After such a long winter, it felt nice to be outside of her burrow and to find moss to eat. So it's the end of winter, sort of like a book we read yesterday, when the sun is out longer, the days are longer as far as the sunshine, and she's coming out of a little hole in the ground, sort of like the bunny had, right? Only this one's in a little mound of dirt, and it has a door on it. Now, I don't think the lemmings have a wooden door on their little opening to their homes, but we can pretend, right? The picture is a photograph, the green and the moss and all that stuff, but the door drawn on and the lemming are an artist's picture, aren't they? They're drawn on. They're not a part of the photograph, okay? And what is she doing? Chewing on some moss. She looked for some moss, and she was hungry because she'd been in there hibernating. As she bent over some moss, a shadow swooped overhead. Huh? The lemming looked up into the sky. But she saw nothing. So she continued on to find more plants to eat. She had run out of the plants that she had collected before winter, so she was very hungry. So she probably had stored up some food, right? For the long winter when she couldn't get out and find much, but wasn't enough to fill her hungry tummy. Just then another shadow passed across the sky. And again the lemming looked up, and again she saw nothing. She was enjoying the plants, and she was eating as much as she could. So she just went right back to it again. There she is, looking up. Huh? That moss tasted so delicious. Do you ever feel that way when you haven't eaten for a long time and you're just so hungry? You just want to eat and eat and eat. Okay, that's kind of how she felt that day. Well, just as the lemming turned back toward her den with a big handful of moss, a young owl dived down and landed right in front of the entrance to the lemming's den. The owl had 1 foot on either side of the doorway, the entrance to her den. There was no way for the lemming to get inside. So here's our lemming looking a little scared there. Like, huh? Oh no! And over here in front of her den, you can see the little hill, little mound of dirt is the owl. Again, see how big the owl looks compared to the lemming? What do you think the owl likes to eat? Yeah, that's the part of the book I don't like. But you'll see it's not as bad as you think. Owls tend to eat small rodents and small birds, I think. I'm not sure all their little critters that they like to eat, but they like to. Well, here's the owl. You won't get past me, the young owl said with a sneer. Look at his face. That's a sneer. The lemming ran from side to side trying to find a way in his den, but it was no use. She decided that the only way to get past the owl was to get him to move out of the way on his own. But how could she trick an owl into letting his dinner get away? She knew that she was going to be his dinner. Yeah, there's that picture. Well, she had to think fast, didn't she? The lemming thought for a moment, and then she spoke. Owl, look up to the sky above you. Spread your legs a little bit and bend your head back. The owl rolled his eyes. Ugh. No way, I'm not stupid, cried the owl. The lemming shook her head, knowing that she would need to be a bit more clever if she was going to get away. So her first idea, here she is talking to the owl, and the owl is saying, oh, brother, I figured that out. So she wanted the owl to look up, spread its legs a little bit because it was blocking her entrance, and she thought while it's looking up in the air, she could run fast, and she could run right between his legs and into her home again. But he figured out what she was trying to do, and he said, no, I'm not going to do that. Well, the owl said, I haven't eaten today, and I'm going to eat you, the owl said. The lemming thought a little second more, and before coming up with came up with a fantastic idea. You know, the lemming began, you don't want to eat me. I'm too small. I saw a big fat lemming over there that would make a much better meal. And he points to another direction where there could be, up here's ours standing up, the legs of the owl again. How big it is compared to this cute little lemming. It says, I'm tiny. Go eat another lemming that's much bigger. Of course, she didn't want her friends to be eaten, but she thought if she distracted him and he walked away, she could right into her house again, her little den. Well, the young owl looked to where the lemming pointed. There were no other lemmings around. Why would I want to wait for a lemming that might never come out when I can just eat you, the owl said. The lemming thought some more. Here is where the lemming had been pointing to. Here's some little doors here and there over some other little lemming houses, but none of them were out. They were all inside with the door shut. See, there she is pointing, and there's the owl, thinking, not seeing any other lemmings and saying, why should I bother? You're here, they're not. Well, then the lemming said, why don't we play a game? She asked it with a slight smirk. If you win, I'm all yours. But if I win, you have to let me go. The young owl was hungry, but he loved games. So he jumped from foot to foot with joy. I love games, he cried. What game are we playing? How about we see who can jump the highest? The lemming asked. There's the side of the owl looking down at the cute little lemming, suggesting the game. Now, what do you think? what if you were to guess and you saw a little tiny guy that was like small as a little mouse, could he jump higher or could an owl jump higher? What do you think? And the owl has wings too, right? Keep that in mind. Well, the owl thought for a moment when she said that, and he replied, when she offered the game, and he said, okay. He was sure he was going to win. I'll start, said the lemming. She squatted down and jumped as high as she possibly could, but the top of her head didn't even reach the owl's beak. You think that jump will beat me? Ha! The owl laughed. Ha ha! I have wings. I can jump so high that you won't even be able to see me. And there's the lemming. Jump, jump, jump as high as she possibly could. It wasn't near as high as the owl's beak. And the owl was kind of taunting and saying, ha, that's nothing compared to what I can do. So the young owl readied himself to jump and finally launched himself high into the air. As soon as the owl's talons were high enough that they could not catch her, the lemming hurried into her den and slammed the door shut behind her. She was smart, wasn't she? So there is what's happening. The owl says, watch me. Whoop, he goes, and whoosh, went the lemming. Because the owl was distracted and she was up high in the air showing off how high she could jump. Just perfect timing that she knew, the lemming knew the feet claws, which are called talons, couldn't catch her. And she was fast. And that was her trick, to get him up in the air so she could get back in. When the owl landed his jump, proud and eager to finally have his meal, the little lemming was nowhere to be found. Huh? He says. Oh, there's the door shut. Huh? Uh-oh. He didn't get that one. The young owl flew back to his nest, disappointed and hungry. And when he told his father what had happened, the older owl put a wing around his son, like putting an arm, right, around his son, and said, next time, don't play with your food. The young owl had learned his lesson. He told himself that he would never again let his pride lose his meal. And there's his daddy comforting him. And there's actually a couple lessons in this book, right? His daddy said, never play with your food. Well, that's a kind of a funny play on words in a way, because lots of times parents may tell their children, don't play with your food, eat your food. And if you don't want that particular piece, just set it aside. Don't play with it or put your hands in it or whatever. So the author of the book is being funny about that, because the owl was playing with the lemming, wasn't he? That's not the same thing, but it's a different way of looking at play, the word play. But then the other lesson, the owl told himself he would never again let his pride lose his meal. So he was being like, I can do this better than you kind of thing. And because he was showing off, he missed out. So that's a lesson on being proud and being unaware of a situation because you were so busy thinking about how good you were. Now, that doesn't mean we should think we're bad, but it just means we shouldn't let that proud feeling get so carried away that we can't see what's going on around us, or maybe what somebody needs help with, or what somebody's doing, or something you need to do because you're so busy thinking about yourself. So you can talk to your mom or dad about that one. And yes, this is what I remembered reading. That's the end. But I wanted to tell you that the author was born in a town that I cannot pronounce very well. It's in Nunavut, which is that's the province area in the Canadian Arctic. And that's what I was trying to remember. I had read somewhere. She is from far up north, and her name reflects it. Far up north in, in northern Canada. And that's the end of The Owl and the Lemming. Hope you liked it. See ya.